Good evening. I'm Ed Berger, president of Hutchinson Community College, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to another edition of the HCC Experience. It's an opportunity for us to introduce personalities to the community and also talk about Hutchinson Community College and the services that it provides to its students and the community. Tonight's guest is Christopher Lau, and Christopher is the coordinator of guidance and counseling services at Hutchinson Community College, also coordinates advisement at Hutchinson Community College. Christopher, talk a little bit about some of the services that we have in the Student Success Center at Hutchinson Community College and how we really use those services to help a student get through the learning process at our institution.
Okay. Thank you for having me, Dr. Berger. In the Student Success Center, we're located in the Parker Student Union, and we have a variety of services that we offer. Within our office, we have advising for undecided students, with the goal of trying to get those students to a point where they can make a decision about an academic major and then go out to one of our departmental advisors to work on classes in that major. We have personal counseling services. Sometimes students come to us and they have a history of counseling. Other times they're having difficulty adjusting to their college coursework, or maybe they've moved away from home. So we provide counseling, and I'd like to mention all of these services are free for students. In our office as well, we have disability services. So students have the opportunity to have academic accommodations based on a documented disability. Usually these students have had services provided to them at the high school level, and so we can continue those services at the college level. Two other unique advising services that we have in our office. We have an athletic academic advisor who works primarily with our athletes, and also an allied health academic advisor who works with our students, preparing them for appropriate coursework for our allied health programs, and also helping them apply for those programs and prepare for those.
Yeah, Christopher, you mentioned undecided students, and how many of our traditional students would you say just roughly fall into that category when they come to our institution?
Well, honestly, most of them. I think even students who have decided on a major, statistics show that at a community college level, students will change their major 2 to 3 times. So even if they've decided, sometimes they're switching majors. But as far as the number of students that we advise in our office who are undecided, we're looking at around 500 to 600 students, maybe even more at any given time during the year, and those are just the ones who are advised in our office. Now we have our McPherson and Newton outreach centers, and advisors at those centers help students in those service areas. They also have a number of undecided students that they advise as well.
You know, when we look at that advisement of an undecided student, sometimes we think that's the traditional student, and I know we have some non-traditional students who come our way are looking for a career change and not exactly sure which way to go with that new career. So it's really a non-traditional issue as well.
Absolutely, and we have some services and classes that we can help both traditional and non-traditional students decide what they want to do. One of the things with a non-traditional student that we want to learn is about their history. What jobs have you worked in? What prior academic experience do you have? Because that gives us a lot of information about perhaps a change that they're looking to make. We have a specific class called Career Decision Making, which is designed to help students take both interest and personality tests to match those with jobs that we have in our community. The other thing we can do is we can do individual career counseling with those students. So do many of the things that we would do in that classroom experience, but on a one-on-one basis, so we can help them match what they're interested in with majors and careers that we have.
You know, when you look at our student population, the number of majors we have, and looking at them being undecided, we're really saying that's not a bad thing to come in as an undecided student. When you look at that career and decision-making class, how do people get into that? Is that voluntary, or do people decide that, you know, John, I think you need to be in that class to perhaps get a sense of direction and perhaps get on track?
Yeah, it is a voluntary course, but it's heavily emphasized in our general studies advising. When we meet with a student who is undecided and we're setting up that first semester schedule, we're encouraging them to take career decision making. It begins after orientation ends, so often the students will have their orientation instructor, and that instructor will teach the career decision making at the same time in the same classroom after orientation ends. So for the student, it feels almost like one class enrollment that goes for 10 to 16 weeks, depending on the section, where they transition really nicely from learning those skills that they need to be a successful student in orientation into making a decision about a career. And it also works really nicely with the timing for enrollment, because students are starting to get an idea of what they want to do late October, early November, and then they can prepare for spring enrollment, maybe with a new major and a new direction.
So you'll look at aptitudes for a student, and that doesn't necessarily mean a skill ability. What if one says that everything shows that I'd like to be a pharmacist, but gosh, I'm terrible at science. Mm-hmm. How does that work?
Absolutely. Well, we have a couple.
What I want to do and what I can do might be poles apart.
Sure. We talk a lot about that in the career decision-making class and in career counseling. We have placement assessments that give us an initial idea of where a student is academically, recognizing that even if a student doesn't have a high ability in mathematics, for example, that if they start in appropriate level coursework, they can work their way up to needing or getting to the point where they're ready for those upper level classes. But we definitely have to just talk about what are you good at, what experience do you have, and what do you think you could learn. Mix that in with interest, and where does your personality fit in the world of work. We used to have some aptitude tests that we would give, and we've gone away from some of those aptitude tests and used more of an interview process with students to learn more about what they're good at, and definitely use that to make a career decision.
So those aptitude tests, not quite as important a tool any longer?
Yeah, correct, not quite as important. What we found is some of them were not quite matching the needs of our students now. Many of them were paper and pencil tests, and they were looking at more manufacturing skill than they were the wide variety of aptitudes that a student could have.
You know, another part of your job certainly is looking at the advisement of students. And I know advising students has become a real emphasis for Hutchinson Community College. I think in some of our assessments campus-wide, why that was avoided, so we're trying to improve some of that advising that happens on campus. Tell me how important that is for a student, and how a student makes sure that he or she is being advised in a curricular area to a point that they can be successful, not only at our institution, but also at a four-year school.
Sure. Academic advising is critical. Our academic advising program that trains our advisors to be good advisors was actually recognized 2 years ago as an academic advising program of excellence. We were one of only 3 community colleges and/or technical colleges that were included in that recognition. So what we do is we have an online training for advisors that is mainly philosophical in approach. It gives them information about the demographics of our students, which is updated regularly, but also what the advising relationship is and what it means. At the end of that training piece, then advisors learn about the specifics of enrollment, how to actually get students in classes. In addition to that initial training, advisors are required to have at least 2 hours of development hours every year. And the goal there is to update on any changes to curriculum, any changes in our technological systems. So we really, I guess what I'm trying to emphasize is we want our advisors to be trained. We want them to know the information well when they work with students. From the very beginning of when students come in, we try at every opportunity to let them know that your relationship with your advisor is going to be one of the most important ones on campus. This is the person you can go to if you're struggling in a course and you need to learn about support services that we offer. This is a person that you can go to if you're finding that your work schedule is interfering with your classes and you need help talking to your manager about reducing your work schedule. Just a crucial person to know. When students first apply to HCC and they select a major, then they are assigned an advisor within their curricular area. So a business major is going to have a business advisor. And those business advisors then, in this example, keep up to date on information about transfer universities, the Regents universities in Kansas, what their expectations are of business majors, so that we can do our best to help students graduate from HCC with all of the classes that they need, so they can transfer in at junior status and be ready to go when they go to KU or Wichita State, for example.
How early do they have to declare a university? Is it essential that they do that really when they come in our doors to say, you know, I plan to go to Hutch Community College for 2 years, and my university destination is K-State. What happens if they change after that first year? Is that going to throw them off as far as their timetable and the courses that will transfer, or is there a universal set of courses that are available to transfer to the Regents universities?
It is important that we know as soon as possible where a student wants to go after HCC. We have a number of relationships with universities like Wichita State where if a student knows early enough, they can contact Wichita State and be assigned a WSU advisor while they're at HCC. So that really helps make a smooth transition. If a student doesn't know though, as long as they are pursuing an associate in science or an associate in arts degree track, as long as they're on track and getting those courses, we have articulation agreements with the Regents universities that say that if the students graduate here with an AA, for example, an associate in arts degree, they can transfer into those colleges at junior status. Now, students will run into a few difficulties because they're transferring into a university, but they're also transferring into the College of fill in the blank at that university, the College of Business, the College of Sciences. And so that's why it's important that students know as soon as possible where they're going. One specific institution may say, in addition to your math requirements at HCC, we want you to have statistics. So if we know that the student is transferring there, we can make sure that they enroll in statistics, which counts for our degree as well, and gets them on the path to not be behind when they get to their transfer university.
When they transfer, do we do a follow-up on those students to see how they, I know sometimes you hear horror stories about an individual transferring to university and having maybe half of their credits not transfer. What do we do with that student to assure that that doesn't happen?
It's really great that the universities have, they call them counselors days or transfer days, where they invite both high school counselors as well as college advisors, and depending on the school they call them advisors or counselors. They invite us to their university, and they will have typically a panel of students that have come from community colleges, and so we get an opportunity then, and it's not always our students. I mean, it might be a student from Cowley or from Butler who is on the panel, but we get a chance to hear from the students the struggles, if any, that they had in beginning at a community college and going on to a four-year university. And then we take that information back and we say, what can we do to address these problems with our students so that we can have seamless transfer to the university. Outside of these transfer days that the universities do, though, we don't have a lot of follow-up with students, other than anecdotal experiences where we'll have students come back to us and tell us about how they're doing and what's working well for them since they've transferred to a university.
What about the student who really thinks that he or she has a major in mind and takes a lot of those specialized classes? And I don't want to pick on any curricular area, but say they think they want to go into music. And so they take a lot of music classes from Hutchinson Community College, and by the time they finish, they have discovered perhaps math and enjoying math and perhaps some of the sciences, and decide that they might really like to go to engineering when they transfer. They graduate from Hutch Community College with an Associate of Arts degree, but they've got a lot of classes in a specialized area, say music. Mm-hmm. How do those 64 hours transfer on then into an engineering curriculum if that's what they want to do?
Sure. If the student graduates from here, which is important, and we're always focusing students on graduating here prior to transferring on, it's not going to be as much of a problem, because even though we have students major in different majors, they are still leaving us with an associate in arts degree or an associate in science degree if they're transferring. The difference comes in the number of electives and the types of electives they choose. So an engineering student, above and beyond the baseline algebra requirements, is going to select high-level math courses, and those are going to be counted as electives. Whereas the music student is going to select music theory courses as electives. So those two students, when they transfer on, if they're transferring to a Regents university, we still have that articulation agreement in place. They still transfer as a junior, but they may need to take additional math courses, let's say, in engineering to get them to where they need to be. Universities have provisional acceptance into their colleges for these types of situations, so a student just needs to complete, let's say, the calc sequence in order to be fully admitted into the College of Engineering. The other option is for the student to stay with us for another semester or two and get those classes. And we would certainly encourage students to do that because they've been here, they're our student, they know our processes and procedures. The tuition is more affordable for the student, so they can get those classes then and transfer on.
So that might be a good decision, that part of that student, to say, you know, I decide I like engineering. I know I need some lower division classes. I can save some money. I can perhaps have more individualized instruction, and I'll be another year at Hutch Community College.
Yeah.
And that works for them.
Mm-hmm. And we would tell that student as advisors, we would want to help them understand that that's okay. And in fact, that might be more normal. Students at HCC average taking longer than 2 years to complete their degree, and that's for a variety of reasons. Changing majors is certainly one. Coming in and needing some foundational coursework to prepare them for our 100 level courses is another reason that might cause a student to stay here an additional semester or two.
Let's take a brief break and we can learn more about Hutchinson Community College and some of the programs that are out there. And we'll be back with the HCC Experience after this important message. Welcome back to the HCC Experience. I'm Ed Berger, and we have as our guest this evening Christopher Lau. And Christopher Lau is Coordinator of Advising and Counseling Services at Hutchinson Community College. And we've been talking quite a bit about the undecided student, and certainly Christopher's office does the advisement for those undecided students. We also have advisement in curricular areas all across campus. How many different advisors do we have at Hutchinson Community College? You might talk a little bit about the training we have. Just can't be an advisor because you want to be an advisor.
Sure. We have over 120 advisors, and depending on the time of the year, that might be anywhere from 120 to 130, spread out across 8 departments and several majors. And it's dependent upon need within a particular major. So, for example, if we have a large number of allied health students, which we do, then we're going to have more advisors in that area so we can keep the ratio of advisors to students low. We really want to have that individualized attention with students. Regarding training, as I mentioned earlier, we have this online training, which is really a philosophical approach to academic advising. And at every opportunity in the training process, we're making sure advisors understand just how critical that relationship is that they develop with students. One of the words that advisors will hear over and over again is intrusive advising. We're really looking for developmental, intrusive advising. And what I mean by that is we want advisors to be connected to their students. On campus, we have an early alert system. And so if a student is missing a few classes, an instructor will warn the student that they have been attending class irregularly. That notice not only goes out to the student, but goes out to the advisor. And the expectation then is that the advisor be intrusive and contact the student and say, you know, you've missed this course 2 times, 3 times. What's going on? Tell me, is there something going on that's preventing you? Have you been sick lately? Because at any of these opportunities, depending on the student's response, the advisor can then offer support and connect the student to services. So the student says, I've had a cold that just won't go away. We can say as an advisor, did you know we have student health services? And your student fees cover that. It's free for you. Let me pull up their hours, let me pull up their information and give it to you and tell you where it's located, and you can go there and talk to one of our nurses or our nurse practitioner about what's going on. Maybe they can prescribe you some cold medicine so you can get better and get to class. We can also then discuss the importance of class attendance. So there's always a focus on this intrusive advising. Another thing that's emphasized in the training is the advising appointment, the regular 30-minute to hour appointment, focusing mainly on the student's activities, the student's interests, and less on actually selecting the course and enrolling the student in the course. If you go out to our website, you can pull up curricular guides for every one of our majors. You can see semester by semester a standard plan for being a biology major. And so a student can access that and know which classes they need to take. It's about saying to the student, let's talk about where your level of reading is and when you're going to find time to study, where you can study, what your work schedule is, and how we can work your class schedule around that work schedule. And all of those other things, which activities you're involved in and how busy is that going to keep you during this semester. And then when all of that is done and the relationship is established, then we're talking to students about which classes you need to enroll in and actually enrolling them in those courses.
Yeah, you talk a lot about the responsibility of the advisor. What's the student's responsibility? It seems as though we're shifting a lot of that responsibility away from the student to an advisor, and the student has some culpability here too.
Sure. It's definitely a growth process. We have available for advisors an advising syllabus. And what that is really looking at advising like a teaching relationship. And the syllabus clearly outlines then not only the advisor's responsibilities, but the student's responsibilities as well. It's important for the student to know where these resources are and how to access them. So the student can go into his or her Dragon Zone account and pull up an audit of their transcript so they can see which areas they still need to complete courses in to graduate. And so that first appointment may be a little heavier on the responsibility for the advisor. So the advisor reminds the student to get a parking pass, to check in with financial aid to make sure everything is accurate, to go to the bookstore and get books. But by the second appointment and the third appointment, the responsibility is really shifting so that we can help students be independent. One of the things that we try to do with our students in our office is show them how they can search for courses and where the self-enrollment function is within their student portal. And by the third or fourth semester, we might actually have the student self-enroll at one of the computers that we have available in our office and sit with the student through that process, because we recognize that depending on where they go, the advising relationship for them may be very different at the university. They may be expected to enroll themselves in courses. So if we can teach them how to do that now, then when they transfer on, they'll be better prepared to do that.
So the student can actually bypass the advisor then, if I'm hearing correctly.
Yes and no. If a student is seeking a degree or certificate from HCC, they have to have advisor permission to enroll in courses. There's basically a place to check within the student's file in our internal system to allow them to do that. And part of the training that we give advisors focuses on not turning on that self-enrollment from the get-go, making sure that the student is prepared to enroll in courses. We have several different safeguards in place that would keep a student from, for example, enrolling in Calc 2 when they've never taken college algebra. The computer will prevent them from doing that. But we feel it is really important for the advisor to explain why that is and what they need to enroll in. So advisors are highly encouraged not to turn on self-enrollment for students from the get-go.
I know you mentioned two specialized areas, allied health. We have a number of allied health programs, and that's a special kind of advisement that those students get.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Those programs have very clear prerequisites for the program. The student needs to take this set of courses in order to have what they need to apply then for the program. One of the interesting things, though, even though that seems like a prescriptive set of courses the student needs to take, is there's so much else that goes into it. Our nursing program is competitive. We have a number of students who apply every year who are great students who don't quite make the cut for that program. So the academic advisor then is not only enrolling him in those prerequisite courses, but is saying, while you're working on these prerequisites, you only have 10 more hours, but why don't you enroll in 2 more classes that would also meet the requirements for the Associate in Arts degree? In case you don't get into our program, then that next semester you take more classes and now you're ready to graduate with an Associate in Arts degree. You have something that you can take with you from this experience while you're preparing for that next application period.
Looking at as many options as possible for the student.
Absolutely.
I know she mentioned athletic advisement, and certainly I would imagine we probably have as many as 300 athletes on campus, and many of them are certainly on a transfer track. I think if you look at the typical athlete, that is their destination, to be a transfer, and so it's very important for those students to get appropriate advisement so they can transfer successfully.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the expectation is that the athletic academic advisor understands eligibility requirements, understands well the needs of the transfer university, and also understands the situation that our student athletes are in. They practice a lot. They're gone a lot. For some sports, they're missing class to travel to a game, and so it's important that the athletic academic advisor understands all of the special needs of these students and works that into the advising relationship, the selection of courses. Another thing that our athletic academic advisor does is conducts tutoring sessions in the evenings for specific athletic programs. So they have a chance, say our football players, one night a week to come in, and we have a number of peer tutors, individualized peer tutoring available for those students so they can get together as a group and study and work on their classes.
Part of the obligation to that student population, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
Christopher Lau, so good to have you on as guest of HCC Experience and sharing some of your thoughts, ideas, and information regarding guidance and counseling and advisement at Hutchinson Community College. Why don't you give our listeners a contact information if they would like to contact you about more about those services that are available at Hutchinson Community College?
Sure, thank you for having me. My phone number is 620-665-3583, and my email is lauc@hutchcc.edu. And my office location's in the Student Success Center, then in the Parker Student Union.
Christopher, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we thank our viewers for being with us again this evening. We hope to see you again next week.